Hello, my name's Kelly Linden. I am the co-chair of the San Diego Building Electrification Coalition, and I'd like to talk to you about how to electrify everything cost effectively. Just as background, the San Diego Building Electrification Coalition is a group of over 35 organizations across the spectrum that are working together to accelerate electrification in the San Diego region. So how can residences electrify everything? It turns out it's actually pretty straightforward. There's equipment that can do all of these things. First, you need to switch to electric vehicles, EVs, which I think most people are familiar with. But it turns out that all of the appliances in your home can be electric as well. And so this photo shows all the different things in your home. There's really four major systems: water heating, your cooking, heating and cooling, and your dryer that can all be electric. There are lots of great technologies that have come out that are super efficient and cost effective for electrifying all of those appliances. And once you do that, you will no longer be burning fossil fuels through natural gas in your homes, and you'll be all electric. Now, why is electrification important? Well, one reason is for the climate benefits. When you burn fossil fuels in your home, it emits CO2, and that is bad for the climate. Turns out it's also bad for your health to breathe the combustion that comes from those, particularly from stoves. When you have a gas stove burning, it turns out that it causes a lot of asthma in children, and it's a lot like secondhand smoke in terms of its health effects. So please, if you still have a gas stove, be sure that you're turning your vent on or you have your window open. There's lower life cycle costs with electric equipment. Sometimes they do cost a little bit more upfront, but hopefully you will save money over time as you use them, particularly because they're very energy efficient. It's also better for public safety because natural gas is prone to explosions and leaks, and that can be really bad when one of your gas pipelines catches on fire. So one of the things you want to do when you electrify is do it cost effectively. And part of the reason it is cost effective is you're trying to use as little electricity as possible when you electrify. And that way we won't have to add as much capability to the grid in order to support all of our homes and businesses going to electricity. So I have 5 strategies that I've listed around how you can do electrification cost effectively. The first is to have rooftop solar. That way you are generating your own electricity that you're using in your home and you don't have to buy it from the local utility. Even with the latest utility rules, which are sometimes called NEM 3.0, you will make your money back over time. It does take a little longer now than it used to, but it is still worth looking at going solar for your home. I have 4 other strategies. I'm going to walk through them one by one now. The second one is when you're looking to electrify your home, you really want to see if you can avoid upsizing your electric panel. You are going to need more outlets in your home for each of the different areas that you're putting in electric equipment where you used to have gas equipment. But if you select your equipment carefully, a lot of times you can avoid upgrading your panel. So it's really important to be thoughtful about the entire project you're looking at and all the different components of it and seeing if you can save yourself money in not having to upgrade your panel. And sometimes you have to upgrade both the panel itself, or what can be really expensive is when you have to have the utility upgrade your service capacity to be even higher. The other aspect of why it's helpful to not upgrade your panel is that think about it, if every single home needed to be at a higher capacity, the utility would then have to generate more electricity to support that. So it's not only a personal benefit to not have to upgrade it, it's a societal benefit because we won't have to have entire communities paying for all of these upgrades to the distribution systems and the generation systems that would be doing that. What's interesting is a lot of times when folks do estimates of how much electricity it's going to take to electrify homes and buildings, they often assume everyone's going to upsize, and they have wildly high estimates because of that. For example, many homes have electrified on 100-amp panels, and they're great solutions. So be a little skeptical when you see numbers that say we're going to need twice as much electricity that we use today for electrifying our homes. The next one is, what are some of the specific technologies that you can use to avoid upsizing? There's a couple of different devices that I've mentioned here on the slide. One of them is a really simple device. People use it a lot when they're adding an EV to their house and you don't have a plug yet to plug in your car. It's called a circuit sharing switch, or a simple switch that allows 2 appliances to plug into the same socket. And what you do is you pick which one's the primary and which one's the secondary, and the switch will make sure that only one is active at a time. A common use case is an EV in a dryer because they often use the same socket. And the way you can set it up is that your EV can be charging until the dryer comes on. You pause the EV while your dryer runs, and then as soon as the dryer is finished, your EV picks back up again. And if you use one of those, you don't have to add any new circuits to your house. And so that's really great. There's more sophisticated devices that are actually done at the circuit panel level, where you can have circuits that are shared among multiple devices, or even the entire panel to be shared among multiple devices. They're very clever, they're very helpful, they do get a bit more expensive, but if you're going to be replacing your panel anyway, it's something to consider to try and use your service that you have as best you can. The next thing is in terms of picking the exact equipment that you're going to use. You'll want to be picking equipment that's both energy efficient and power efficient. And I'm going to talk about that more in a second. But it's important to look at both of those things. People tend to just look at energy efficiency. The other thing is that it turns out if you have combined units, that, for example, if you have a range that has both the oven and the cooktop in one unit, there's only one plug for that. Whereas if you bought those units separately, there'd be two plugs. So a lot of times the combined units are more effective. More and more products are coming out that are 120 volts for electric options, and so that can be helpful if you can choose those. The other thing to think about is making sure you get the right sized equipment. And I have a note in a minute that I'll show you about EV chargers in particular, but it's really important not to oversize the equipment that you put in your house, because then you may have to pay more for that equipment when you really didn't need it. And I have a picture here. There's actually washers and dryers that you can buy a single unit that does both. They're kind of fun. They use them a lot in Europe where they have a lot of space issues. You put your dirty laundry in and you come back in a few hours and you have dry, clean laundry when you're done. It's kind of cool. So the next page kind of jumps into the difference between energy efficiency and power efficiency. And the example I like to give is related to instantaneous water heating versus tank water heating. The red curve on this chart shows what a tanked water heater, like a heat pump water heater, will do, where it's pretty much continuously using a low level of electricity to keep your hot water warm all the time and available when you need it. Folks will talk about instantaneous as being better because you only have to turn it on when you need it. But note the blue line, when you turn it on, boy, it really uses a lot of juice to do that instantaneous heating. And then when you're done, it turns back off. Turns out both of these in this example use the exact same amount of electricity. It's the area under the curve where you'll pay the same in terms of utility rates for the two, but there's a big difference in their power efficiency. And the power refers to the peak amount that it uses. And so for the instantaneous, your peak is quite high, and your electric panel will need to support that. So if you're trying to be clever and avoid doing an upgrade for your panel, you're going to want to avoid the electric instantaneous. You'll be much better off with a tanked system like a heat pump water heater. So be thinking about both of those dimensions when you select your equipment. The other thing I mentioned was about EV chargers. If you do end up putting in a new circuit to charge your EV, you'll have to think about how many amps you want to have in that circuit. And there's a tendency to want to go high because that way you can charge your car faster. But this chart shows how, if you're plugging in your car every night, think about how many miles you drive every day. Do you really need to add hundreds of miles to your car every day to plug it in? Probably not. You might be able to get away with a 20 or 30 amp circuit, and that'll be plenty for what you normally be driving. And then, you could always plug it in for longer than 8 hours if you needed to do even more. So be thoughtful about how big of a circuit you add when you're adding the EV charger to your home. The other thing you can do is time shifting. And right now, you may be aware of the current utility rates that are called time of use, or TOU. There's a static schedule that tells you when it's more and less expensive to use the electricity. And typically there's 3 different periods, on peak, off peak, and super off peak. And so what you can do is for those things that are flexible, like your EV charging, you can have them run when it's cheaper. So if you're able to shift when you use the electricity to the times when it's less expensive, you'll save money. What's emerging is something much more sophisticated than just predefined fixed periods of time, is something that's referred to as demand response. And we're looking forward to more of that coming over time as the utilities adopt this mechanism to allow you to take advantage of it. And essentially what that'll be is a dynamic signal to tell you when you can save money by reducing your usage, and be able to respond to that. For example, on super hot days, if you can turn down your thermostat, that would help make it so that the system can support all the different needs that we have. The last one I'm going to mention in terms of how to cut your costs when electrifying is to take advantage of incentives. There's a lot of incentives coming out right now, and they're not going to last, so you're going to want to make sure that you take advantage of them while you can. At the federal level, there is the Inflation Reduction Act and tax credits that started at the beginning of 2023, and those will last for 10 years. And they will give you discounts on purchasing equipment. You buy it up front, and then next year when you file your taxes, you can get a discount of up to 30% on certain equipment. For example, heat pump water heaters or heat pump HVAC systems, and that's available to everyone. There is no income qualification for the tax credits, and it's available today. The next area for federal taxes, federal discounts is coming soon. There's some energy discounts that will be upfront discounts, which you'll get upfront, and that will be more generous, up to $14,000. But it is income qualified for those. It's targeting low and moderate income folks. It's being set up by the states. Even though the federal government's paying for it, they're allocating it out to the states and having them set up programs. State of California looks like they're aiming for maybe early 2024 for those to become available, but those are going to be substantial. So it'll be important to see if you're able to take advantage of some of those. And that'll cover appliances, your panel upgrades, weatherization, EVs, and even more. So at the federal level, lots of incentives. The state of California has several programs. Today, what's available, the Tech Clean California program has a couple $1,000s for heat pumps for HVAC systems. And hot water heaters are coming, expected in the fall of 2023, up to $3,000 for a heat pump water heater. That's an interesting program because the incentive is actually paid to the contractor, who then passes it through to the consumer. So you will need to make sure that you use a contractor who's enrolled in that program. There's another California program called the Energy Smart Homes. That one has some really generous rebates that you can get, but it does require that the entire building be electrified and that you're removing all gas equipment from the building in order to be eligible for those. Note that almost all of those that I just mentioned apply to both single family and multifamily, and they're all targeted on residential areas. One tool that I find that's super helpful, because these things are ever changing, tech, for example, ran out of money for a while ago and they just restarted it. You can keep up to date with what's currently active at a website called switcheson.org. If you type in your zip code, it'll tell you what incentives are currently available and what contractors can support this kind of work, and it's really helpful to get you started. I think the bottom line with these incentives is there's lots of rules. There's lots of money, but there's lots of rules. So you really have to do your research to make sure that you're leveraging all that you're eligible for. Sometimes you can combine across programs, sometimes you can't. So you'll want to be thoughtful in how you do that. So to repeat, there were 5 different ways that I mentioned that you could try and be very thoughtful about how you do your electrification to save you and society money. And hopefully you can take advantage of all those. I've also listed a number of resources which are super helpful in terms of supporting you in your journey towards electrification. So thank you very much and good luck.